Your voice, energy. Very low. Energy.
Hi, Alex. How you doing?
Yeah.
Hi, Alex.
This is not serious. Keep it like,
Yeah.
We're not scary people, so yeah.
Hi, Alex. How are you? How are you doing, my brother? Are you okay?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Please introduce yourself to the cameras.
Hey, I'm Alex Michelsen. I throw Prime.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. And speaking of Prime, tell us, what is Prime?
So Prime is a multi-genre event that happens in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And I don't know, it's like my baby. I really enjoy it. It's, it's something I created in 2016. And it like turns 9 this year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I want to know, right? What were your visions for Prime? And also, did those visions come to life? Or along the way, sometimes you do have like challenges, and then of course it doesn't go how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
So is there anything, what are your visions for?
I think it's constantly changing. I think I'm really happy in that it's like a very inclusive space. I think a lot of people feel very comfortable when they attend, and that's like always kind of the main thing that I've wanted to push forward with it. I think in terms of like goals that I wanted initially that I kind of pivoted on, was probably like thinking it was going to become a festival or wanting it to be that. But then I kind of you kind of hear horror stories and I don't know. I'm like kind of like a one-man team in terms of like the main organization of things. So obviously I would need to expand on that if I wanted to push forward for something like that. But I don't know, with some of the horror stories that I've heard, it kind of makes you not want to do things like that on like such a large scale.
What are the horror stories?
Just kind of like violence, things like that. It really freaks me out, and I don't know. I'm an introvert. I'm not trying to deal with that.
Oh my gosh, that's actually so crazy because imagine you're actually hosting. Can we still speak? Oh, that's actually crazy because you're a founder of like an event, but you're actually an introvert. That's normally extroverts, founders of events like that.
I mean, I did a personality test recently. And I was 51% extrovert. So funny enough, I guess it checks out.
Do you think it's right? Do you think you are actually 51% extroverted?
I think it depends day to day.
Okay. And tell me, what was the hardest thing about starting Prime?
I think it was just the fact that, sometimes when you get overwhelmed in a space, when you go as an attendee, you can leave.
Yeah.
But as someone who is the host of the event, like you have to like stick through that. Like if you're having a bad day, doesn't really matter. You gotta you gotta thug it out.
Yeah. Especially because you're saying you're also a one-man team.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You're hosting all those huge events by yourself.
Yeah.
So you're the one that's deciding the lineup, the DJs, and how does that come about? Like how do you decide?
I don't know. Like I think I try and look at who's doing well. I also look at who's doing well and not getting booked, and I try and find like a middle ground. I think it's always about like giving space. I think that's really important, whether it be like upcoming DJs, but also wanting to give your audience like a big act every so often as well. I think it's just also about making sure that as a business it can exist and it can run. Like sometimes there's like unrealistic costs that you can't kind of do, and with that you either have to save for it or just like be like, okay, cool, that's just like a wish list act. That's just someone I want to get before I end things.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's just about understanding the business dynamics of it while also understanding what crowd wants and trying to constantly manage between the two things. Yeah.
And also sourcing locations, was that not difficult for you in the beginning?
Yeah, constantly, especially when I look at like new cities. It's not as easy to go and do like a site recce in like a different city because now I'd have to fly there.
Exactly.
And then with that, then it's just like email correspondence and like phone calls. It gets quite boring and also just a bit, I don't know, like I think having that personal in-person touch, I think that is invaluable.
So isn't it easier now that you are who you are and like Prime is that big to get like to source locations and everything?
Yeah, totally. I think sometimes also depending on the space and the type of venue, things aren't actually that easy. Like I think with Cape Town, for example, there's a lot of like rooftop venues, but like there's a crazy fee that you need to kind of put in for that. And a lot of people don't realize like, oh, you know, like everyone wants a rooftop party, but at the same time, they don't think about like the business side of it. And when you look at that, you're like, oh, crazy. This is actually like quite like a responsibility to take on, because you have to think about these overheads that are already so daunting before you even start looking at lineup.
But also, if it's like a rooftop event, what is there to think about? I mean, there's like a nice view, people come.
There's like a million things to kind of consider. Because also, I guess you can do like nighttime rooftop events, which is what I do in Joburg. But I think with Cape Town, it feels like the crowd definitely wants more like daytime rooftop events. Which is,
so you studied your crowd.
I'm outside.
So actually, speaking about studying a crowd, what kind of crowd comes to Prime? Do you know? Have you studied them? Do you know that?
Yeah, I think Prime, based on the themes that I push forward, as well as a very like fashion forward crowd, very like open minded in a sense, like very much hip hop and R&B loving, but also into like Janos, like live acts, Afro beats, kind of selection type sounds as well.
Yeah. Oh, is that why? So Prime, is that why Prime is a multi-genre event and not just like one event?
Yeah, basically. I think also just personally having been to events, like before I started it, I was like kind of sober for the most part, and I would be like, oh, okay, like it's another one of those sets. And I think people can easily gauge if there's too much of the same thing, and it's important to rotate. Otherwise it's like, okay, cool, we're listening to Sexy Red again. And I think that does happen from time to time, but I think it's good to, like for me anyway, to be cognizant of like, okay, cool, this act who's playing at 10 needs to be briefed, if they are a hip-hop R&B type DJ, to not go too hard, because those same songs are going to be played from 11 till 12, for example.
Are you ever specific with them? Like, don't play this, play that?
In a sense, yeah. Sometimes I'll like just name drop like one or two tracks that are quite like big at the time, and they'll be like, hey, like maybe just don't play those songs. Like I'm not saying don't play anything from the artist, because I think a lot of DJs get quite tunnel vision when it comes to tracks, and it's like, we have to play that track. And then they often don't realize that like, hey, you're actually not like the headliner, so maybe just play a song that isn't from that act, but it'll still, you know, have the crowd quite energized. And, you know, I think a lot of people come up and they want their story to jump from opener to headliner instantaneously, and often they don't realize that there's actually like time and effort put in to build yourself up. And it's not as simple as just saying that, hey, I want to play late.
So you've never really been like very specific, like, no, play this, I want this to be played, I want like maybe like a set list basically.
Oh, no. I could never be like that. It was just, I'd like to give freedom to my acts, but like I think it's good to give a scope. And
now that Prime has come to Johannesburg, which do you think is better? Like, which groove is better? Cape Town Prime or Johannesburg Prime?
Look, if Cape Town said Joburg is better, whom I to disagree.
Now say it with your chest. You say it with your chest.
No, I will say it with my chest. I love Cape Town. I love it. I came from here. This is what made me. But I definitely think there's a different energy in Johannesburg.
Do you live in Cape Town full time?
I'm in between constantly. Yeah, it's a bit stressful, but we make it work.
I can imagine. Okay. And where do you see Prime in the next 5 years? Do you think, are you at a point where you're like, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm set. Like, this is Prime. Or is there more?
I think there is a lot more I want to do. But one thing...
Can you tell us the tea?
No, I can't.
Okay.
Hear me out. I never like jinxing.
Yeah, no, I get
I absolutely want many things to come into fruition, and some have already started. Like I made one merch drop already. I want to do more of that. I think it's so fun. Like I'm into fashion. I like streetwear. I think it's a fun extension of my interests through this brand, which I feel like is so multifaceted. And I think with that, it gives the option to do so much more than just like groove per se. And I think it's definitely something I want to explore.
And then how do you pick the themes for your event? Like last time it was blockcore. Why?
Well, blockcore is quite personal to me.
Oh really? Tell us.
Personally, I hate micro trends, but it is like a very visual and like it's probably one of the biggest micro trends in the last year or two. But for me personally, I think in a South African, a Cape Town context, a lot of people just wear football jerseys. Like, if you appreciate sports, you're going to wear whatever jersey it is, right? And I grew up just kind of like being obsessed with football. Like, I wasn't like very social. I wanted to go pro like every other kid did. And I would like incorporate it into my personal style. And, you know, since then I'm like, okay, cool. This is like functional. It's really comfortable. I can run around all day and I can not smell gross. I can look good. I can feel good. And it just so happened to also just be this crazy micro trend that popped up. So I was just like, okay, cool. Coincidentally, I'm just going to push for it. And it worked out really well. But other times I think I try and push opposites. So if I'm like, okay, cool, if I'm doing like a blow call, which can often be seen as something quite masked, then I'll try and go 180 with the next theme and do something more femme. Because again, I don't want my audience to just be masked.
Interesting.
So it's really important to understand the dynamics, and like even with lineups, you know, like if you have like a hip hop or trap headliner, then maybe have like a R&B act as the headliner for the next event, or at least not just have hip hop trap acts on that lineup. I think it's important to understand the dynamics of space and curation, in that if you do too much of one thing, it could alter your audience for the better or the worse.
Yeah, they could get bored.
Precisely.
Okay. And then also, if you could afford any artist, which 2 artists would you bring for the next prime?
Ooh, probably like South African or global?
Maybe they're watching, you know? So like...
It would be nice.
South African.
I think I really like Blackie. I think he's just been one of my favorite acts. He's like such like a perfect act. You know, he does R&B. He does like a bit of like a Janos kind of sound. His like hip hop trap as well is just like great. I think he would be amazing. And then I'm trying to think who else. This is like a tough one. Maybe like a Durban Gogo.
Of course.
Yeah, we love Durban Gogo in this house.
And One International?
One International, Jati Singh.
Oh. Yeah. Is he like R&B type of vibe? Have you ever heard of him?
So she's very kind of like genre as well, which is quite cool. I actually booked her when she came to South Africa in 2018. She was a lot smaller, but she had this viral boiler room during like, I think it was performed in 2019, but it went viral in 2020 during like lockdown. And she's become a producer since, and she has this radio show on like Rinse FM. And she's definitely like an inspiration to a lot of people. Just like holding space as like a femme act who is just also very politically inclined as well, and a lot of people have a platform and don't always use it, and I think she's definitely like an inspiration to many people. Also,
you're a DJ as well, right?
I am, yes.
Would you actually DJ Prime? Have you ever?
I often DJ Prime, actually, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Also, when did you become a DJ? Before Prime or after? So before Prime.
Yeah, but I wasn't the best. I still don't consider myself the best. I enjoy music for sure, but I think DJing is like, it's something that I feel like you need to do constantly to perfect your craft and still constantly work on to do better. Whether it be in your playlist curation or just your actual technicalities when you play. But it's something I'm constantly, like, I'm very hard on myself about. Like, if I make any mistake, and I do, I'll just be that is the worst set you've ever played. And then people will be like, oh, I really loved your set after. And I'll be like, oh. No. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think people listen to sets for different things and different reasons. True. And there's always that chat about that DJ in the crowd who is a bedroom DJ and they can like hear the headliner make a mistake. And I feel like there's always someone in the crowd who is potentially more like technically inclined than me and like here's a mistake and they're like, and then every time I make a mistake, I have that mental image where I'm just like, oh, okay, that person knows, and it's okay. Because
you can hear your mistake while DJing. Like, can you hear the transition is not going well?
I mean, it's not always a transition. Sometimes it's just like a timing thing. Sometimes I'm like, I should have let it sit longer. I was a bit more impatient. I shouldn't have been as impatient. And I think it's interesting when you're really hard on yourself to not accept when things go well and fully focus on when things are negative. And I think I often get in that kind of like, that kind of like thought and like that kind of pattern. Yeah.
So which genre do you play?
A few. So like hip hop, R&B, trap. I quite like like a
trap.
Yeah.
What? Okay, what else? Yeah.
I'm also into like selections, type sounds.
Yeah.
They inspire my curation and like the way I play, I guess. So I get a lot of kind of like edits, I would say. I like the Kitchenada sound as well, where it's like future beats and things like that. Housey, kind of like funk house, I guess. Yeah, ballet funk. I like a lot. I don't always get to play it though. I guess it just depends on how I curate and what the space exists for.
Actually, I was about to ask you that. How do you decide that, okay, no, today I'll be playing hip-hop, today I'll be playing R&B?
I have to be attentive. So like I'll always listen to sets before me and be like, okay, cool, that's what they played, that's what I can't play. And then I also have to factor in whether there are other hip-hop or whatever genre I'm playing type acts later, and also try and think about where I am in the context of the night and whether I can go that hard or if I need to be a bit more cautious in terms of what I play.
So you're saying that in the moment, you decide in the moment that, okay, no, this DJ is playing this, so I can't play this.
I mean,
Is
like
that what you're saying?
throughout the whole night, I kind of like have this thing where I listen and then I'll hear a song and I'll be like, I wanted to play that, but I can't anymore.
So you don't prepare before you get to the event?
Oh, no, I do. But I think it's more listening to what is also played at the event and understanding that despite me planning to play this, I can't anymore.
So then you decide which song should get into that other song instead of the song that you had planned.
Yeah.
Isn't that difficult?
It's quite stressful.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, I think it comes to... It works out quite nicely when you curate so that they're like not the same genres before. Sometimes when it is, it's harder to avoid. But I think it also comes down to the experience of the acts before you in knowing that like you've either sent them a brief and they know what they can and can't play.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, they have the experience to know that like this is when I'm playing. This is what the maximum type of energy I can kind of play with a type of song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Just a quick question from the floor. I mean, you are in the event space.
Yeah.
What has been some of the events and festivals that you look at and you're like, that's my dream festival or event?
I would say probably Spotify Mom. They came out of nowhere and they really did something. I would say the same for Hey Neighbor. Like analytics wise, just because I look at that stuff too sometimes.
Yeah.
If you look at their page standing, it's really impressive considering they've done one event.
Yeah.
And for Kendrick to be a headliner at your first event is
also,
something.
They said bigger lineup. So who do you think is bigger?
I mean, there's rumors of Travis, there's rumors of Drake, but also people just say things. Personally, I would love any of those, but I think if they got a Doja, that would also be crazy.
Ooh, yeah, that makes sense for Hey Neighbor, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think Doja is quite like I don't know, I think she taps a lot of the right markets.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have like, femme acts as your headliners. I think that's always a vibe. Like, I mean, even with like Delicious, they had like Tim's 2 years ago. I mean, obviously last year was a bit difficult when I can't remember who dropped out last minute, but someone did.
Yeah, and then they added.
It was like Jason Derulo and like Busta Rhymes.
Yeah.
Personally, not my flavor. But I think it was admirable that they replaced a headliner of that scale with multiple international headliners. I think that's always. Yeah, I think that's fair.
That was cool.
I think in the city you're also doing really cool stuff. They're getting really cool left niche international acts, which I feel like there isn't always a space for that. So there's a lot of people doing really cool stuff.
And also, you said Doja, right?
Doja.
Would you like Doja headlining on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday?
Doja gives Saturday.
And then who for Friday?
Who for Friday? Interesting.
Wait, you think Doja gives Saturday?
Yeah, Doja's huge.
But now let's talk about like Travis and Drake.
Okay. If they're
in the picture.
Okay, no, if that's the case, then that. But at the same time, I think isn't it like a Thursday to Sunday thing? So I could understand.
I think it's a Friday to Sunday.
Oh, Friday. Okay. In that case, then probably Doja Friday to get people to come in early to camp, and then the Travis or whatever on the Saturday.
And then Sunday, who's he giving?
Ooh, Sunday. Interesting.
Someone like her, but of course
Maybe like a
you already
Georgia
had
Smith or something.
Ooh, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm done.
Another one from the floor. We bumped into you at the Cape Town event last year,
Yeah.
the outreach. Would you like to share your experience, whether you enjoyed the event, anything you think they should have improved about the whole festival?
I just think it was probably over capacity. I think we've all kind of like heard the complaints online where a lot of people have spoken about like they didn't like how VIP was. And I think, yeah, like some of the spatial dynamics of a space where you pay more for wasn't like aligned. Like I think a lot of people were like really upset that they paid so much more for VIP but got a lesser experience in general. And I feel like I think it's justified because as a consumer, if you're paying X amount, you have a right to say something. So I think that could have been improved. And I guess also just like the logistics of getting out because some people were like stuck.
Yeah,
Personally,
in traffic.
I didn't because the people I was with, we kind of like, we made a plan like improv. Like our shuttle driver told us he was like in a line and it was to be like an hour and 45 minutes to get in to get us and then we'd still have to leave. So we told him to like U-turn out of the line, meet us by the exit, and then we got out. And luckily, because of that, I was able to catch the Cage Artist at the after party as well. But I definitely see that, yeah, they made a lot of like mistakes. I think maybe it was like a fresh team.
Yeah.
But I think they fixed it a lot better in terms of the Joburg edition. So I think a lot of people who criticized them definitely went back on their word and were like, hey, like we definitely acknowledge that you made a mistake, but you also listened to your audience, which is very important. And they fixed everything that they did wrong, which was, I think, very commendable.
And I'm guessing you also listen to your audience, right?
Yeah, I do.
Was there any like recent complaints about Prime that you had to like be like, okay, I have to go back to the drawing board and fix this?
Yeah, would you say there's ever a perfect event or perfect festival? And as an event organizer, what are some of the challenges that you bumped into as a Prime organizer and all that? Usually some of the challenges that you usually bump into to the whole scene, yeah.
I don't know, like I think it's difficult. I don't think a perfect event exists. I am overly critical on myself. I think if I had like a crazy budget and a crazy team, I think it would be easier to pull things like that off. But yeah, I think there's so many things that can go wrong, and like I've seen it firsthand in attending really big scale events, and I think that's also what's made me not want to do it and rather attend it, or at least work it in a capacity where maybe I'll just do photography or I'll like I don't know, like artist liaise. Like I've done things like that before, and that's made me feel a lot less stressed about the idea of a festival. But I think from an operations standpoint, I think it's so much harder. Like I think whether it be from your audience or from your team members, I think there's a lot of pressure, and you can either take it well and improve on it in real time, or you can fumble it entirely and be like, okay, cool, I'm going to fix it for the next one, and it's up to you to fix it on the next one. If you don't, then I think there's a problem. I think there's so many aspects to an event where things can go wrong, whether it be like, venue, if it's too far out, logistics in terms of getting out of venue. If there's too many people, it means there's going to be traffic. If that isn't anticipated and there aren't things that are still open in the venue where you can at least stall, I think that's also a problem, because that was like another complaint with the Cater thing. I think it's very interesting and very difficult, because I think there's always going to be someone who didn't enjoy it from their perspective, and you've got to try and at least acknowledge that with future events. But sometimes people just they're upset for whatever reason, and maybe they just project from a weird interaction with some other random crowd member and they put it onto the event itself. Not something you can really control. So I think there's so many factors involved that you can either be like, okay, we did as good as we could, or you could be like, okay, cool, these negative kind of comments are gonna ruin the entirety of this production for me.
And also, you said you're a one-man team. I want to know why. Is it difficult for you to get like a team?
I think it's just something I've always been hesitant about, because I'm like, okay, cool, what if I get the wrong person? What if they impact on how things go in terms of proceedings? But in terms of the expansion, it is necessary, and it's something I'm very much looking into now. So I have people who kind of work for me, but I don't necessarily have people who are at the same level making decisions. And I think maybe going forward, that is something I'm looking to. But as it stands, I'm very much happy in that, like, there is no ping. There's no delay. If there's a decision to be made, I can make that like immediately. There's no one to consult. Yeah. So I really enjoy that. But I think at the same time, sometimes it's nice to consult on another very informed opinion, and I could very well be wrong, you know?
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to be checked in a professional context, versus you making a mistake and then, like, you know, like with the Keitra thing where like there's like a lot of people saying things, which can be the case. I think with social media, it's something scary, but it's also something that you need to take on your chin and understand that, like, this is also in the hopes of improving things for future events.
Okay.
And the last one from the floor, your general thoughts on the ticket system, prices, where else you have events that are doing RSVP or free registering and you just get into an event for free, or the festivals that are sometimes overpricing their tickets. What are your thoughts on that?
And second, maybe we can wrap up with this one. Your top 5 best events you've been to in 2024.
Okay.
Sure.
Rank.
Wait, no, I gotta do
The
that
first
one
one.
first. The
Yes,
ticketing.
the second one, rank.
I think the ticketing thing is interesting. I think a lot of people enjoy it, and if they're taken care of, it's like a really nice experience. Like with like the Gunner event, that was really cool.
Yeah.
I don't think that was ticketed though. I think it was just like you enter, that kind of thing. I think depending on the type of event, it can be really cool. But I think sometimes it creates an unrealistic expectation amongst audience about what to expect for events, because with like Gunner, for example, this is a crazy budget Heineken event. But if you're comparing it to something that's just like a bunch of homies are doing and it's free RSVP, the scale and level to which to compare are very different.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of audience feel like maybe entitled in the worst way sometimes, in kind of like expecting that like that Heineken Gunner experience at like something that like maybe 3 friends are doing.
Yeah.
So I think audience just needs to be like realistic in terms of like their expectations from an event. In terms of overpriced kind of festivals and stuff, I think price needs to be justified in experience. And if experience is lacking,
I agree.
then, you know, if people are saying things and it gathers momentum, then you as the organizer need to understand that like this is your shortcoming and you need to fix it and acknowledge it. You need a lower price, or you need to do better with experience with the follow-up event. Because like customers don't come back. Like it's as simple as that. You got to understand the business dynamics of it too. And, you know, whether that be a free event or a paid event, like I think an experience is enough to make you want to come back or not.
Okay. And then the second question,
Ranking the top 5.
Yeah.
Interesting, because I also don't go out that much. So it's like, it's actually really difficult. Yeah. I like to stay in a lot because, I don't know, this event life can be taxing. You know, I do a lot. But top 5. In no particular order. I really enjoyed Daisies. It was my first time kind of like camping somewhat. Like I did influencer work for Flying Fish, and like I had a 3 to 4 a.m. set on the Saturday, I think. So I couldn't go home with the auto shuttle. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm camping here. And it was actually kind of quite pleasant.
Would you do it again?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I'm not really a camper.
Okay.
I think it's a very specific type of person. That I really enjoyed. Does Gunner count? That was this year.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
It was this year.
It should count. Yeah.
Jazz Fest as well. Trying to think what else. Probably the selection at Texas. I quite enjoyed that. I don't really go to Texas too often, and for it to be like a very like culture forward event, I think that made it a plus. It's always nice going to a selection event, but more so, I don't know, like hearing local sounds, but also hearing like the sounds that you come to know from selection was quite a good combo. But funny enough, like my standout wasn't a selection act, it was Q.
Of course.
Of course. Goes without saying.
Yeah.
And then
last
one last
one.
event. Yeah, well, that's difficult. I would say, can I say one of my events?
Hello, if it's good, it's good, right?
Yeah, I threw a prom themed event in I think it was like August last year.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Like we mentioned, like I like the transitioning between themes, some more mask, some more femme, some kind of like in between.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just for me as well, as someone who likes to dress up, it was a nice excuse to, and I think it worked out quite nicely. I think a lot of people enjoyed themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last questions? The floor? Nothing? Right. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Of course. We love that.
Home sweet home.
Yes, home sweet home, always. Thank you for joining me, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
Can you please give us your social media handles just before we wrap this up?
So for Prime, it's primetime_ZA_. And then for me, it is A_M_MCHLSN.
Thank you. And to everybody watching at home, I hope you definitely enjoyed this podcast and I hope you learned more about Prime. Come to the next event. Like you said all the dates, 1 and 7 March, right?
Yeah, 1 March Cape Town,
Yes.
7 March Joburg.
And there you have it. Say bye. Thank you, Alexi.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me do a snap to